KBSC Apache Junction and K241BQ Fort McDowell.
Phoenix's funny stations.
It's a comedy calamity with the Wild Jokers starting right now. So buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And good morning and welcome to the Wild Jokers. I'm Len. He's Brad. Good morning, Brad. How are you?
No, not too bad today. How about you?
You're so mellow. Well, this is the birthday show for Mr. Brad Manahoff. Happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you.
I got to give the shout out there. How have you been?
I'm okay.
Yeah, you should be better than okay.
I'm
because
doing
this week's Wild Jokers, just to announce it, Mr. Chuck Woolery, the final of our Mount Rushmore of comedy and game shows, is going to be joining us, and Tommy Chong this week.
Which was legendary.
In itself. We caught up both of them earlier in the week. Now get this one. We actually overbooked the show just a little bit.
What's wrong with that?
Well, here's the thing. Mr. Shadow Stevens, we had to actually bump him till next week, and maybe Cheech of Cheech and Chong next week. So
right.
Just to let everybody know. So we kind of have a piecemeal show that's going to be like a two-parter.
It doesn't matter.
This is
it's
like a
still
two-part
good stuff.
miniseries
Yeah,
on the
right.
network.
Oh, my God, really? It's a miniseries?
Yes,
that's
it
a
kind
new
of
one.
is.
I don't
What?
think they do miniseries on radio anymore.
They don't?
Maybe they did in the early days. Like the War of the Worlds days, you know.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember that.
right.
Now, and
How could you remember that? That's before we were born.
Well, it was out there. No, it's out there on cassette and stuff.
You mean like you remember the
retro.
historical aspect?
Yes, the historical
okay.
aspect of it. And
I was just going to say, you look pretty good for 105 years old.
No, the historical aspect. You know, I'm Mr.
teasing
Pop
you.
Culture.
I'm totally teasing.
All right. Well, we got to actually finalize our three-part interview with, of course, we did Bob Eubanks and Wink Martindale in the last show. We had so much information, so much fun with those two. We actually had to spill it over to this show here on Wild Jokers Radio. Mr. Chuck Woolery, we're going to be catching up with. And why don't we do this? Why don't we do it now? I'm just going to actually mess with the engineer totally here. Why don't we catch that interview that we did earlier in the week with Mr. Chuck Woolery? 2 and 2 on Love Connection is on the way right now. And good morning and welcome to the Wild Jokers. Brad, our tribute to game show hilarity of the past, present, and future. We continue on with our Mount Rushmore that we voted on. It is, I hate to say it, it's kind of like a dictatorship in how we did this, but
it's our show. We're allowed to do that.
I guess so. And so we're actually honored and very pleased to introduce Mr. Chuck Woolery to the Wild Jokers Radio Show. How are you, Chuck?
I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
Doing outstanding. We've caught up in our tribute with now yourself, Mr. Bob Eubanks, and Wink Martindale. And I gotta give you all credit on this one. You guys have projects.
I know all those guys.
I know, but you guys just don't stop. This one thing about the past, present, and future, looking at your careers and looking at your body of work from starting in whether it be music or radio, going forward to the game shows and to the present day. You have a whole bunch of projects you're working on today. Let's start there, and then we'll go further back. You have your own line of fishing gear, which I'm an outdoors guy, and I'm really excited to talk about this. You're quite the angler I saw on the internet and stuff like that. Talk about your fishing products real quick.
Well, I love bass fishing. I moved to Texas literally to bass fish. People laugh at it, but it's true. I moved out of California.
That's funny.
I got here, bought a house on a lake, and I fish every day. But that's just my particular passion. And I found this lure that I'm as most bass fishermen know, topwater is like the epitome of our sport. We love catching fish on top because you get to use all the senses. You hear it, you see it, you feel it. So anyway, we developed this line of Moto lures, which is a lure that when it goes on top, you get sound and action without having to pull the lure, so it does it in a static position, and it's very unusual, and it really is effective. It works real well. So, I started using these and just thought I'd share them with my friends. So I bought the company, and we've sold a lot of them. It's fun. It's it's just one of those things. It's not necessarily a big business for me. I just enjoy doing it, and we make a little profit, not much though. It's fun.
When you were out in California, because I'm originally from Southern California myself, moved out to Arizona for a lot of different reasons. But out in California, there's some great lakes out there. Did you get your love of fishing from being out there working out in Southern California, or was this a childhood thing?
No, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. I'm an Appalachian kid.
Okay.
Till I was in my 20s. I grew up right where Loretta Lynn and Ricky Skaggs and all those guys, right in the same neighborhood. Yeah, I grew up, and my dad was a fisherman and a hunter, and so in the summers we'd always go to Canada for 2 weeks of vacation, sleep in a tent on a rock, and fight off. It's the truth. I mean, it was the most boring vacation for a kid you could ever take. But we used to run around Kentucky and fish all those lakes and streams there, and then went to California and thought, well, I've lost it. And so I didn't fish for a long time.
Okay.
And then I found out that, Castaic, Casitas, Cachuma, and all these incredible lakes in Los Angeles, of all places. And so I started fishing again and fished with a pro out there for about 5 or 6 years, and he really taught me a lot. And then everybody left me, and I just went, okay, I'm going to Texas. I'm going fishing. I'll see you. They said, well, when? I said, maybe 10, 15 years. I'll be back, maybe.
You mentioned Loretta Lynn and Ricky Skaggs. Obviously, a lot of people don't necessarily know this about you. I thought this was pretty interesting, but you yourself have had a little bit of a music career. Tell us a little bit about that, Chuck.
Well, I did. My musical career was once described by a friend of mine, Roger Miller, who said that my career, if I ever write a book, I can do a chapter on my musical career and title it "Riding the Crest of an Undertow." So to say it started off slow and tapered is not exactly, a great review, but I was in the music business for about 9 years, fiddling around with it. I didn't set the world on fire, but I had a lot of fun, and introduced me to a lot of opportunities. And had it not been for that experience in Nashville and flying out to Los Angeles to do the Tonight Show, I probably wouldn't have had a career as a game show host, because that's really what launched it.
That's interesting. And, I know you're being a little modest, but a few of your hits actually did make it onto the charts. So I would say, even though call it a small career, a lot of people would just be happy with that.
Well, I had a couple of small charts. They weren't really, blockbusters or anything, but they were enough to get a little bit of a notice. And I enjoyed it. I wrote and sang, and I got to write for Loretta. Who was it? Tammy Wynette. I wrote songs for her. Ray Price. I wrote a song for him. So it was kind of fun to be able to look back on that and say, gee, I wrote that. I remember where I was when I wrote it, and I remember Christopherson and I, in the same studio, and when I was doing Naturally Stoned, he was the janitor, and I was recording, and that's true.
Wow.
And and he had just written all of the stuff that Ray Price and everybody else was about ready to come out with. I mean, it was like 2 weeks before it all started to break loose, and he was a janitor at Columbia B.
That's an amazing story. So you mentioned Johnny Carson. So how did you transition from the music world into TV?
Well, it was a very strange thing. Jonathan Winters, who I was a fan of all my life as a young man, in junior high school and high school, he's one of those comedians who just I kind of adopted characteristics of his behavior because of all the records he put out and I knew everything that he'd ever done backwards and forwards, all his characters. And I related to him because he's from kind of the same neck of the woods. He's from Dayton, Ohio, so it was close enough geographically that I kind of related to his humor, but not just me. I mean, the world did, and Robin Williams made an entire career off of who Jonathan Winters was.
That's for sure.
He became the next generation of Jonathan. So we all admired him, and out of the blue, this sounds really strange, but I won't go into the details, but a sequence of events happened that were totally out of my control, and Jonathan Winters literally cold called me at my apartment in Nashville. And I didn't believe him. He said he'd heard this song that a friend of his gave to him and what I like to do, the Carson Show, the Tonight Show. And, of course, when you get a call like that, you don't believe anybody. I had this, this history, and everybody knew it. I thought it was one of my friends put me on. And finally, I figured out it really was him, and then was very apologetic. And he said, well, the next time you come to Los Angeles, give me a call, and I'll take you on the Carson Show. I can take anybody on I want. He always lets me because he likes me. And so I did, and he did, and I did the Carson Show. Merv Griffin saw that show, asked me if I would stay over another week. He called my publisher in New York and asked to get in touch with me if I'd stay over another week and do his show. And I did his show, and at the end of his show, I remember Billy Crystal, must have been one of his first shows, was on that show with me on the panel. And Merv said, geez, you ever think about being a game show host? And I hadn't at all. And he said, well, I have this show that I've got to do for NBC, and I'm kind of looking for a host for it, and I think he'd be it. So it was Wheel of Fortune. And that's, literally, that's how my career, it was just a, very, very strange sequence of events that were totally out of my control. And But thank God I had enough time in front of people, and I was comfortable kind of with myself, and TV didn't scare me to death, and so I was able to pull it off. And then I started a career as a game show host and transitioned far more easily than I did into music.
The original host of Wheel of Fortune. Once again, we are joined here on Wild Jokers Radio with Mr. Chuck Woolery. The Love Connection format. For some reason, growing up as a kid, watching you and loving it and adoring it, love to watch relationship or people like blind dating train wrecks for some reason. The format of Love Connection stands the test of time because I spoke to so many people while we were promoting the show and having you on Wild Jokers Radio. So many folks, your little catchphrases, your 2 and 2 and things like that are so memorable. And also, most of the folks that I know, and I want to get your experience, how many times did you sit on that couch and just cringe because a date went bad? Because sometimes there was some pretty good mudslinging on that show.
You know, I did close to 12 years of that show, 11 years and change. So, and it was an odd thing. I can remember, when you do a game show, no matter what the format or what the game is, you do normally 5 a day. So you transition in other words, if I have a bad day, I'd have a bad week.
Right.
So when you're doing 5 a day and they're stacked on top of each other and doing a half an hour in time to tape, you tend to forget what happened on the last show. So, and you can't carry all those experiences over to the next show. So what you do is you learn, at least I did, I kind of learned to wipe everything and start all over again within 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then go from show to show to show. So, and I never really watched myself on television. I don't know why. I just didn't, I didn't run to the TV and say, "Oh, I'm on this morning. Let's see what I did." But I would be on vacation, especially with Love Connection. And I can remember this distinctly. I'd be on vacation skiing or something like that and sit down at television and turn it on, and there I would be on Love Connection. And so I was there. I'd watch it. And it was for me like watching someone else do it. It was very strange. I almost became part of the audience. I would say things and laugh at myself and think, how did I think of that? That's really funny. It was just the oddest experience. So Love Connection was like one of those shows that looked like a game show, but it was really a talk show about only one, subject. And it was a free flow of conversation back and forth between 3 people usually, and there were opportunities for funny things to happen, and they did, and kind of cringy things to happen, and they did. And then you kind of moved on. And I literally don't remember very, very few experiences. I really don't. I remember one black guy was on who was a very handsome guy. He looked like he walked right off the cover of GQ. And he came on with his girlfriend. She was more beautiful than he was handsome. She was gorgeous. And they hated each other.
Oh, no.
And I could never figure out why. I mean, if opposites, they certainly weren't opposites. They were both beautiful, but they just didn't like each other at all. And finally, he said to me, I said, "Geez, I don't get it. I mean, she is so gorgeous." And she, obviously was. And he said, "Oh, Chuck, I've seen better looking legs and a bucket of chicken." And I'll never forget that
Wow.
line that he said. I thought it was tragic and funny at the same time. So I was very conflicted.
Well, that answer.
I was normally really conflicted on stage anyway.
That kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask you what was one of the more unusual things that happened. That's pretty good right there.
That's
actually
a pretty good one.
Yeah, I'll just use that as an example because that's one that I remember.
Yeah, I always was fascinated with the voting process because they had the little 3 buttons in front of them on your set. And was that actually tabulated and everything? Because technology back then is a lot different than now. Now everything's so virtual. You text your votes in and they tabulate and count. How was that done? Because it looks like 3 little buttons. Was there a guy in the back room that was tallying this up, or how did that work?
Well, they actually had those were all those chairs, all those seats. We had our own studio, so it stayed up all the time.
Okay.
And all of those chairs that the audience was in were all wired. And so it went into a computer and tallied all the votes, and that's how it was. To my knowledge, that's what I know. Now, if it was done some other way, I don't know about it. But to my knowledge, everybody voted, and their vote was counted, and it usually came out right. It was interesting.
That is really interesting how it was. And when it came to your experiences with game shows, I mean, being the original host of Wheel of Fortune, I mean, that's quite something right there. Love Connection, Scrabble. Out of all the different formats, was Love Connection your favorite, or was it being the first with the Wheel of Fortune, or what was your favorite game show to be a host of?
Well, I mean, you have different opinions. I've done 6 shows, so you have different feelings about each one of them, and thank goodness most of them, if not all of them, were, well, I guess all of them were successes, because they ran, with the exception of Greed, they ran 7 years. So Scrabble was an awfully good show. It was nothing like Scrabble, but it was built on that premise. It was a great show. Wheel of Fortune obviously was groundbreaking. But my favorite of all the game shows, Love Connection wasn't a game show, so I won't put it in there.
Okay.
My favorite of the game shows, oddly enough, was Greed. Greed was a nighttime show on Fox. It was an hour long, and it came along kind of after Millionaire. And it lived for about 2 years, but it was just the most awesome, nasty, wonderful show. I just loved doing that show. I thought it was probably one of the best formats that I had done. But it was a man's show. It was so tough. A lot of women, the demographic for women was very low on it because it was cringy. So that by today's standards, it probably wouldn't be. But I mean, I saw people lose $500,000 by just risking it, and so you didn't get to take anything home with you. If you risked it, you owned it, and there were just probably millions and millions of dollars lost and millions won on that show.
Well, I have one other question, changing gears a little bit. Something I thought was pretty interesting that you did. You were the host of the first playoff Playboy Mansion Playmate deal. How was that?
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be a tough gig there, Chuck.
I gotta know, Chuck. I mean, that's every guy's dream to hang out at the mansion. You got to actually be involved in an event. What was that like?
Yeah. The mansion is a funny thing. I can remember in my early 40s, one of my best friends was a producer in Los Angeles, and he produced all the stuff for the Playboy channel, or Playboy. And so we've been good friends for years and years. And he said, "Look, I'm doing this thing with Andy Sedaris, who was a ABC sports guy. Andy had done, Winter Olympics and all that stuff, and football and all that for ABC." And so he said, I don't have a host for it, and I don't know what to do. And so he talked me into doing it. I didn't want to do it, but he said, "Oh, it won't be bad, and you'll enjoy it and everything." And because my reputation really didn't fall into that category, and I said, "Gee, this is so off the grid for me, Michael." But it was very successful, and he liked it, and we had a lot of fun. And it was interesting because the Playboy Mansion is not what you think it is. It's I guess to most men it'd be a little bit disappointing, but it was just a bunch of girls up there. That's all it was. I mean, it was like going to the beach. but very little going on. I mean, all the things that you think are going on, I'm sorry, they aren't. From my observation, they weren't. And, everybody was very nice to me, and, I drug myself away.
I guess
it's probably the greatest private club that a man could ever belong to. In some cases, anyway.
We go from that story, and I'm going to switch gears to the modern day. Talk about a little bit.
I'll tell you what. By the way, back to before you switch gears, back to the Playboy Mansion.
Yeah.
I used to go up there. I'm a huge boxing fan. I love boxing. It's one of the things I watch all the time. And Hef is a big boxing fan too. So every time a new fight would come on, he'd invite everybody up to watch the fight. I met everybody up there. I mean, Tom Cruise would be there. You name the star, they were there. And so it was kind of fun, to go and mix and watch boxing and do that. So it was kind of a very interesting place.
Well said.
Yeah. You got me floored on that one. Now, going from Playboy to what you're doing, I've seen on the internet, Save Us Chuck. You're very active in our love of our country. And I really love a lot of the spoken words, what you've put out there, and you're actually all over the country doing these little, shall I call them vignettes, perhaps, about our country, and some humor involved in these vignettes. Talk about that website and some of the future projects you're doing, so folks can be up to date with what you're doing and get involved.
Well, we're doing these minutes. I'm kind of the rare breed of Hollywoodite who was a conservative. And I kept it bottled up the entire time I was there because you really couldn't talk about it. And so I didn't. It was kind of like one of those things, if you grew up in my neighborhood in Kentucky, the two things you don't talk about is religion and politics. Mm-hmm. And so I avoided it at all costs, and no one knew where I very few people knew where I stood politically and how I felt about the country and so on. And so when I kind of got away from it, I thought, well, I can open up now and tell people how I think. And I'm a historian, so I really enjoy the history of our country. And I realized, oddly enough, Glenn Beck started something that I was watching him one day, and he was kind of, you kind of cringed and liked him at the same time. It was odd. And he was talking about the progressive movement, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And so I went back and looked it up and went through Hegel, who was the philosopher that came up with progressivism. And Hillary Clinton had identified herself as not being not so much a liberal, but a progressive about maybe 6-7 years ago. And so I went back and looked it up and realized what progressivism was and what it fathered, so to speak, with Hegel being the philosopher from Germany. And it fathered communism, socialism, Marxism. I mean, every ism that was bad that could possibly be.
Every ism.
And I kept thinking, why would anybody want to be this?
Right.
I mean, it just made no sense to me at all. And then I realized that progressivism kind of started in this country with Woodrow Wilson in 1914. Actually, it goes all the way back to Theodore Roosevelt, but it was kind of minor in his administration. And then I kind of, put the pieces together through who was progressive and who wasn't and how you could identify them and what you did. And it was very interesting to me because it had to do with the decline of the country, and also, if you look back at the last 100 years, Democrats have pretty much run this country for the entire 100 years. Very few there, and the Republicans that were in office, the conservative Republicans, you can count on less than one hand. Calvin Coolidge, Ronald Reagan, and that's about it. There are two of them that were really conservatives. And of course, the purists would say, well, Ronald Reagan wasn't that conservative. Well, he really was, but
he did follow Barry Goldwater pretty close. I mean, he was the next best thing to Barry Goldwater when it came to the philosophy, I thought.
But he never really got the power. So when you look at the presidency, only two were really outstanding, and that's Calvin Coolidge and Reagan. And Coolidge changed the world, and he did it by accident. He was kind of like me. He was a vice president whose president had died, and he stepped into office, and nobody knew anything about him very much. And he literally, used pretty much Austrian economics, which was not popular at that time, and the Roaring '20s followed. And then when you look and kind of study with Franklin Roosevelt and all the things he did, well, the Depression lasted a long time, and everybody said it was a government's fault. The Depression wasn't the government's fault; it was the Fed's fault. It was the government, but it was the Fed. If you look back and see how Milton Friedman talks about it, who again is an Austrian Hyatt guy, it gets so complicated that I understand why people aren't that either interested in it or don't know the difference. But I think it's good to know the difference so that when you say conservative, you're not this unfeeling, uncaring kind of, that's ridiculous. That's just kind of politics. We're all people. We care about water. We care about children. We care about education.
Right.
And so that's just kind of a slam against, somebody in a political realm. But in the realm of reality, conservatism is where I would want to be, where I am, and what I advocate for. And so I thought in my later years, as I tweet and do all these things in radio, I'm kind of snarky and have fun with it sometimes. And then I also use it as a platform to educate people who will listen. And it's interesting to see who will and who won't. So I have about, 80-some thousand people who follow me, and just for political things. And so it's kind of fun. And at the same time, I must say that at this time of my life, politics is depressing. Mm-hmm. And so it's very difficult to kind of keep your head above the fray and keep a good attitude, because it really is depressing. It's a strange thing. But we're not even close where our founding fathers wanted us, and they've been, not even close.
Well,
and,
the one thing, though,
interesting to see how, George Washington had the greatest quote I ever heard, and he gave it in his last speech when he was departing from government, and he described the government, and he said, government is not reason, it's not eloquent, it's force, it's like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And I thought, man, that just nailed everything. You have to be very careful. And and the American people, in their apathy and success, we just kind of become anesthetized to everything that's going on. We're not that interested we're interested in our lives, and we're working and, raising our children and educating them and going through life. And so I get that, but we're kind of detached from the reality of what our country, I'll give you another example. Everyone, a senator, a congressman, the president, everybody in the news, everyone always refers to our country as a democracy. Madison, who was a founding father, described democracy in these terms. He said, democracy is the most vile form of government known to man. So if our founding fathers felt that way about democracy, are we a democracy? No, we're a constitutional republic, but it doesn't flow off the tongue. We're just kind of a small d democracy.
See, and this is
people
great.
Don't even know. Most people don't even know the difference between those two, and it's vitally important to know that.
Just right here, right now.
Totally boring to all your audience.
No, not at all. But the thing that I wanted you to talk about is you bring a humorous, snarky side to it, and it's educational. I think it's a great 1-2 punch because mainstream societies, some folks are living under a rock, as I always like to say, or their head in the sand.
Yeah.
So, but Mr. Chuck Woolery, thank you so much for your time. Website, where can people find your spoken words? I mean, I know there's, especially out here in the great state of Arizona, there's going to be a lot of people who will agree with you in this state.
Yeah. Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Chuck Woolery. I'm there. And by the way, I've been on for almost 2 years now, and I'm not verified yet. So I can say anything, and they can't get back at me. I'm not even on there.
That's funny.
Well, Chuck, it's been.
They won't verify me. I think it's funny.
That is pretty funny, but it's been a pleasure to sit down and chat with you this morning. We appreciate your time and all that you do, and hopefully we can catch up down the road here on Wild Jokers Radio again.
All right, buddy. See you.
Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Mr. Chuck Woolery, we got that actually is the Mount Rushmore of our Wild Jokers picks. I mean, we've done it.
Monumental.
It was a lot of fun, and as I said, a little educational.
The thing that amazes me about all these guys is, we talked about it before, is these guys have been doing this forever. I mean, we're talking about guys in their 70s and 80s still running around, starting new businesses, starting new ventures.
That's what I was saying about.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Whether it be Chuck Woolery, Wink Martindale, or Bob Eubanks, who now have all joined us here on Wild Jokers Radio, these guys are like Terminators. They're in their 70s and early 80s, and they just don't have.
They don't make them like that anymore.
But we do have to quit. We got to go to our first break here on the Wild Jokers. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
And it's Orangutan Home Services, featuring heating, air conditioning, home security, plumbing, and much, much more. Call them today, 602-906-0111. Orangutan Home Services, 602-906-0111. Call us today. Autobahn Mortgage, 602-980-LOAN. That's 602-980-5626. Call Autobahn Mortgage for all your commercial and residential mortgage needs. We are friendly, fast, and efficient. 602-980-LOAN. You can also see us on the internet, www.autobahnmortgage.com. Call us today, 602-980-LOAN, 602-980-5626. Welcome back. You're listening to The Wild Jokers on 24/7 Comedy for Phoenix, 1260 AM, 96.1 FM.
Hello?
Hello, is this Tommy?
Yeah.
Hey, Tommy, this is Brad and Len calling you from The Wild Jokers radio show in Phoenix. How are you this morning?
Hey, good. How you doing, guys?
Good. Thank you so much for taking our call. I got to tell you, this is like, I almost needed a moment alone before calling you because I'm such a big fan. I was talking to my partner here, Len, and I had to ask you this real quick.
Sure.
Back in the day when you guys did Up in Smoke, and your credit at the end is man, whose idea was that?
Mine.
I got to tell you, a lot of people don't even see that. And when I tell people that, they are like, that's hilarious. I'm like, you guys can't appreciate Cheech and Chong unless you see all those details. Well, thanks for joining our show, Tommy. I want to introduce my co-host here, Len, and I'm Brad, and we're the Wild Jokers here in Phoenix on 24/7 Comedy. And once again, thanks for coming to our show.
It's my pleasure, man.
Tommy, it's Len. I want to ask you, how's touring been? You've got so much. We're going to go back and forth kind of with your bio and your career and kind of going forward in the interview. But how has the road been to you this past year? As I said, I know you guys are back out and about, and this day and age for our age demographic, I'll tell you that here on the show, the retro acts that are coming around are just they're embraced so much.
I'll tell you, the thrill is gone. You know, we don't get all excited that we're going on tour anymore. Yeah. You know, we don't stay up late all night thinking, oh my God, we're going on tour. It's going to be so much fun. But then on the other hand, you know, when you don't work for a while, it's nice to get out there. So it's really nice, you know, especially if we're going to, you know, places like Phoenix and, you know, places where there's really good smoke, you know.
Right. Yeah, well, this is definitely, now that we're on the medical train here, it's definitely increased or helped our situation, that's for sure.
Definitely true, and we're excited that you guys are coming out this Saturday at Wild Horse Pass here in Chandler, Arizona, and we're promoting Cheech and Chong coming out, and I know Brad is such a huge fan of yours. This has been like Christmas morning for him. It really has. But as for both of us, because the trend, the medical marijuana trend, I got to get your thoughts on it because I know you're a big backer and everything. Finally, I think our country's finally loosening up just a little bit. What's your thought on from going from state to state? We're on the medical marijuana side of things. California is. You look what happened in Colorado and Washington. What's your thoughts on how the trending of the marijuana topic?
Well, you know, Cheech and I, we've always been like 30 years ahead of ourselves. We've known the benefits and the goodness of the pot for many years, and you know, I think it was that report on CNN that really was the straw that broke the camel's back, because when Sanjay Gupta came out and showed the little girls being treated, you know, with epilepsy and they're being cured with you know, the marijuana. I think that ended all the arguments, you know, because remember the argument was always about, well, what about the kids? We got to keep the pot away from the kids, and now it shows you it's curing little girls' epilepsy, you know, and so there's no argument anymore, you know. They you know, and when it went legal in Colorado, and you know, they're expecting, you know, all sorts of trouble and not one death, not one incident. It's and everybody, you know, finally, everybody's waking up and realizing, you know, that we were sold a bill of goods by the liquor people, you know, and the police and you know, the private jails, you know, all that stuff, you know. It was just a big pile of horse manure.
Well, that's one thing I've definitely noticed, being in radio now for 19 years and being on plenty of tour buses. I've never had somebody who likes to indulge in a little marijuana get aggressive, have any problems.
No.
The worst thing, if you get in front of like maybe the pantry where they have the Pop-Tarts, maybe they get a little ruffled. But
Yeah, that's about it right there.
that's about it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah, and now the dangerous drug is edibles.
Yeah, that's it, because you don't know exactly how much you're
that is the
getting.
dangerous drug, you know. I mean, there's cops dropping all over the place. They eat an edible and they phone up and turn themselves in. I'm dying.
Oh, man.
No, it's all good. It's good for the country too, you know, because now, you know, we're being, you know, we're raising money, and it's the kind of money that is going towards schools and toward, you know, repairing the roads, and it's all good. It's all good. Finally, you know.
Yeah, I heard.
I remember when they were busting people for outdoor gardens. You know, they would find a grow in some national forest, and then they would report that they found this dangerous fertilizer. They used some dangerous fertilizer.
It's interesting that you bring up the fact that, the benefits to children. I just saw a newscast just yesterday where it was interviewing a family relocating from New York to Colorado because their daughter had such severe epilepsy. And it was really heart-wrenching. I don't know, a lot of people that, I have family members that even have said to me, it's like, I don't support it, but I support it being legal for the tax benefits. Just like you said, the roads, the schools. I had heard numbers like $70 million in Colorado, some crazy numbers. It's definitely something that you said it right. You guys were 30, 40 years ahead of the mark on this one, and I definitely appreciate that. But I want to change. I want to change gears 1 second, and I want to talk about the early days when you guys first started and you first started doing your records. What was that like? I mean, was it sit down and have a smoke session and just let it go, or did you guys really plan those out? What was the kind of the strategy there?
Well, yeah, basically that was it. Because our teach, we were going to rehearse. We made a record deal with Lou Adler, and now we had, well, what are we going to do? We have to make a record. So we were in this little room behind A&M Records in Hollywood. And so Cheech put on a costume and he went outside, because he's really like a method actor. He has to get into character. He has to put on the costume. So he goes outside and it's boiling hot sun, and it's really hot. And the door locked from inside. And so he's knocking on the door, and I'm supposed to just open the door and let him in. But for some reason, I was trying to record our rehearsal. And so when he knocked, I took my eyes off the recording device, and I looked at the door, and I didn't know if it was recording or not. So when he knocked, and I said, "Who is it?" And he said, "It's me, man, let me in." Well, I wasn't sure if it was recording or not, so I paused. And when I paused, it was a perfect pause. And so when he knocked again, I said, "Who is it?" I thought, well, we'll start the bit over again. That's how it was recording. So I said, well, we'll start the bit over again. And then I heard he was annoyed. I heard that in his voice. And so my joy in life has always been torturing Cheech.
The truth comes out.
And so I thought, I'm going to see how long I can keep there. And so every time he knock, I go, "Who is it?" "It's Glenn, it's me." And then finally he goes, "It's me, Dave, man, Dave." And I "Dave?" And I could hear his voice going, "Yeah, it's Dave," We're in this cool air-conditioned place, and I said, "Dave's not here." Well, he blew it.
Dave's not here.
And that's been, and so we sort of, and then when I finally opened the door and he comes busting in, he was all mad and everything. I said, "Well, listen." And we had gold. We had hit it. We had hit the mother lode. And so we played it we listened to it back for about an hour, over and over again, and every time we'd laugh. And then but that set the stage for how we recorded. We came there with just a sliver of an idea, and then we would just sort of like improv until we got the bit, and then that's the way we did. We did 6, 7 albums like that.
That's so cool.
That's amazing.
We're hanging out live here on Wild Jokers Radio with Tommy Chong. Of course, it's going to be Saturday night, Wild Horse Pass here in Chandler. It's going to be a great show. We're going to be there. We're going to be there. We got to harass you, of course. Tommy, let me ask you, in your body of work, through all that you've done, from records, from television, from your movies, what has been your most satisfying body of work? What is the one project that you've done that has just stood out that you just reflect on and just say, "Man, that was awesome"?
I got to tell you, when Cheech and I broke up, I had to go, I had to figure out what I was going to do. I made a movie and that didn't work that well, Then I went on the road by myself, and that wasn't fun, I learned how to do stand-up by myself, so I kind of begged my wife, Shelby, to come on the road with me, and she said, "No, I don't want to, just sit in the dressing room." I said, "Well, how about if I put you in the show?" And then she couldn't. I gave her an offer she couldn't refuse because she was studying acting at the time, and she's always been, she wanted to entertain, and so So my biggest accomplishment to me is helping my wife become a stand-up comedian.
Wow.
That's cool. That's
sharing the
cool.
business.
That's amazing.
Can you imagine? I mean, I wouldn't. It did not make me popular with the other comedians.
I bet.
No, but it's
In fact, I
taking
was
care of
told
your
off
own.
By a few name comedians. What the hell are you doing, man? This is our time. You know? And then you bring your wife on the road with you. I said, well, you know, have you seen her? I couldn't leave her at home, so having her become, and she opens the show, and she does, like, she can do, you know, half hour, 40 minutes by herself if she has to, and she is like a bona fide stand-up, beautiful comedian with balls of steel. You know, she's out there thick as thin. She went through the whole war that comedians go through. So that, to me, that is, and then I put her in, you know, I've had her in now about three or four movies, you know, our movies, and, you know, the Cheech and Chong movies. She wasn't in Up in Smoke, but she was in every movie after that. And so to me, you know, that's really like taking creating a miracle. You know, turning your wife into a stand-up comedian like that is just, to me, is my crowning achievement.
Well, that's pretty impressive. Keeping it in the family, as they say.
Yeah. And my son Paris, now he's a road manager, and he also plays bass in some of our skits, and he's a very fine comedy writer too. You know, he writes a lot of our stuff now. In fact, what he does, he arranges our stuff. He reminds us of bits that Cheech and I, you know, we forgot. Now he helps us. And then before that, we had Joey, Cheech's son, doing DJing. You know, he's off doing his own thing now. But yeah, my attitude's always been, you know, when Dad works, the family works.
That's a good way to go. That's, you know, teaching them a good work ethic, and that's one thing, you know, no one can argue that you and Cheech both, your work ethic's unbelievable. You guys have been doing this forever, and you haven't given up. What are some of the things you got coming up? We know you have the tour. Anything new planned that we haven't maybe heard about yet, or something that's possibly coming?
You know, we announced a movie. You know, I did it. I announced it accidentally. I wasn't supposed to announce it, but, you know, I'm a stoner. I can't remember.
It happens.
But it worked because we're doing a movie. You know, the movie Super Troopers?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, he's writing and he's going to direct the next Cheech and Chong movie.
Oh, that's cool. That was was pretty funny movie.
So
Super
we
Troopers.
got that going. And then, you know, Cheech and I play a lot of golf. We're going to be playing in the George Lopez Celebrity Golf in May, and then that's about it. You know, and then I personally, well, Cheech has got his Chicano art shows all over the place. You know, he's got that going, and I'm starting to what do you call it? Put my name to marijuana products, you know, such as Canna Saver, which is a coupon that you can buy in Colorado right now, and eventually it'll be all over the country. It's called Canna Saver.
Okay.
You buy a coupon and then you redeem them at any marijuana shop.
That's a good idea.
I think it's brilliant because you guys.
Then we also are promoting a fertilizer called what's it called? Vegamatics, which is a vegetational based fertilizer that helps you. I grew 19 plants on my roof, and I used this stuff, and we had a forest. It was incredible.
So it's like, is it an organic fertilizer? Is that what it is, basically?
Yeah, organic fertilizer,
okay.
without any animal product in it.
Nice.
And it's incredible. It's from, you know, it's a special formula, but it works. Let me tell you, I got a basement full of pot.
Oh, this is like unbelievable. I'm still like pinching myself that I'm talking to Tommy Chong.
I know. Your eyes just lit up when he said forest,
you
by
have
the way.
no idea.
I just want to let you know that.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate what you're doing, and we're really looking forward to seeing you guys Saturday. Hopefully get to meet you guys while we're here. And
well, if you're coming to the show, definitely, you know, we'll meet you then. You know, we do a meet and greet, I think. And, And so and that's another thing we do. We do a meet and greet, and a lot of the proceeds go to food banks around America.
That's great.
Just
So
giving
we do
back.
a lot
and
of
everything.
charity work too. Cheech has got his Chicano thing, where he helps people go get through school, and me, I've got a program that helps. It's a salsa program. He's a Chicano, but I'm the one that in the act that can dance salsa.
Go figure, right? Oh, man.
he can barely keep up with us, but my wife and I, Shelby and I, we dance salsa in the show. And then I started a program at some of the high schools here in Los Angeles where it's like salsa aerobics, where I'm teaching young Latino kids how to dance their country's dance, the salsa dance.
Oh, that's
So,
gonna be a lot of fun.
we're having a good time.
That's great.
It's just always something fun. I mean,
Yep.
there's something positive
That's
with it.
it.
And honestly, I've jumped on the bandwagon with you when it comes to especially the medical marijuana and the marijuana issue, where we just got to loosen up as a society. We're just so wound so tight. And if you had a little
There's too many benefits.
little
That's what there
recreational
is.
fun, and also my dad who had cancer, that would have helped him a lot
Right.
too. So we want to thank you for all that you're doing, fighting for a good cause, especially helping the sick patients out there and mellow the society out that we need it to. We need our society to mellow out just a
Yep.
little bit.
Can't
Brian.
wait to meet you guys.
The whole America, and the whole world needs to mellow out.
Exactly. I mean, if everybody
Yeah,
had this
I mean-
attitude, everybody would be getting along, and there won't be any problems.
And it's the one thing that unites us all around the world. That's one substance that everybody smokes.
Yeah, I would
You
agree
go
with
to
that.
any country in the world, and they have their marijuana culture thriving. I remember in Canada years and years ago, way before we thought about legalizing it, there used to be the pool hall where all the Lithuanians and Albanians and the Russians they all hung out, and they all smoked. They couldn't speak English, but they all smoked pot. It was incredible, and the police left them alone. They weren't like hippies, or they weren't black guys. They were old Russians just sitting around, just smoking,
Just hanging out.
in the open.
That's great. What a story.
That's cool.
Well, we got to thank you so much for joining us here on Wild Jokers. We'll hopefully get an opportunity to say hey to you this week and this Saturday evening at Wild Horse Pass. Tommy Chong, it's been a pleasure and also an honor to meet you since your body of work is just so amazing. And I know this has made Brad's day big old smile on his
Thank
face.
you, Tommy. Really, this means a lot to me.
Hey, listen, anytime. You got my number. Call me anytime.
All right.
you.
Well, thank you so much. Have a great one. We'll see you Saturday.
Okay, see you Saturday.
All right. Tommy Chong here on the Wild Jokers Radio. We got to thank him for joining us. And
I got to catch my breath here a second.
Well, here's something that's kind of funny. This show that we've put together today with our two guests, because we had a couple more guests. We're going to actually have to have them on next week's Wild Jokers because we ran out of time. We had so much information from Mr. Chuck Woolery and Tommy Chong, this Wild Jokers show. But if you think of this body of work here on the Wild Jokers Radio, talking to Mr. Chuck Woolery and then
Right.
talking to Tommy Chong, you want to talk about a yin and a yang?
Well, what's funny is because Chuck Woolery's, his famous song was "Naturally Stoned."
Right,
That's
naturally
really
stoned.
That,
This
that's
is
just,
so
that's
funny
That's
about
just
this.
Funny. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know, but
We're just a bunch of knuckleheads on the radio.
I
What are
know
you
we're
gonna
just
do?
having fun, and boy, did we have!
I still can't believe we just talked to Tommy Chong.
We talked to Tommy Chong and Chuck Woolery about
and
yin and
they're
yang.
all so cool. I mean, everybody we
All
talked
so
to is so
cool.
cool.
So
I mean,
let's have fun.
that's
with
the
them.
thing. I just want to say real quick before we wrap this up, but of all the people we talked to, they all are really as cool as they sound on the radio, and
That's why we like to bring it to you.
And it's so nice dealing with. I mean, it doesn't matter how big they are. I mean, Ron White, he was just as cool on the radio as when we met him after the show. I mean, these guys are just straightforward, cool dudes, and I'm just blown away right now.
And that's why when
Tommy
they
Chong.
come hang out in the studio with us, it's like they're sitting next to us on the couch.
It's unbelievable.
And that's what it's all about. It's like
Love
we were
it.
just hanging out on the couch with Tommy Chong. It's pretty cool. Don't go anywhere. We got the beat on the street coming next. You're listening to Wild Jokers. We'll be right back.
And it's Orangutan Home Services, featuring heating, air conditioning, home security, plumbing, and much, much more. Call them today, 602-906-0111. Orangutan Home Services, 602-906-0111. Call us today. All right, everybody. We are fortunate to have a friend of the show here in the studio today, Lisa Tesler, our luxury home realtor specialist. How you doing today, Lisa?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I can't complain. Get all excited over here for us now. So tell us a little bit about you. How long have you been an agent?
I've been an agent for about 10 years now.
Tell us a little bit about what you do.
What I do is I help clients buy and sell their homes.
And is there anything in particular that you look for, or is there anything special that you might do besides maybe having your client's home on our radio show, of course?
I try to make the process as easy and as painless as possible.
Okay.
And as fun, too.
See, there you go. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So if you want to have a little fun on your real estate adventure and not just be running around looking at boring houses, if you want somebody exciting, somebody fun to be around, and someone that knows what they're doing, you definitely want to call Lisa. Lisa, how can people get a hold of you?
Through my phone number. Would you like it?
Yeah, we'd love that. You're making us work real hard here.
Yes, I am. You got to pick. It's 480-459-6940.
See, that's the kind of person you want working for you, negotiating. She's not going to give away the farm. She's going to make everybody work for it. Thanks a lot, Lisa. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. If you'd like to find out about real estate and about my unique approach, please contact me at 480-459-6940. And then I can also tell you about all the different packages I have to offer.
Autobahn Mortgage, 602-980-LOAN. That's 602-980-5626. Call Autobahn Mortgage for all your commercial and residential mortgage needs. We are friendly, fast, and efficient. 602-980-LOAN. You can also see us on the internet, www.autobahnmortgage.com. Call us today, 602-980-LOAN, 602-980-5626.
And welcome back to Wild Jokers. I'm Len. He's Brad. And it's that time once again for Brad to do what Brad does. It's beat it. Beat the street, Brad. Give it to me.
Okay, we're going to start off. Yeah, I just choose to ignore you now when you talk.
Well, it's Brad's
crap.
Beat the Street, so I've got to make a little funny kind of pun out of it.
Yeah,
somehow.
whatever makes you happy, dude.
What do you got for me?
Okay, you ready? We're going to go to Florida to start off this one.
FLA.
A topless woman vandalized a McDonald's in the Tampa Bay area.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, evidently she went in and she was flinging food around, eating soft serve.
Why was she
cream.
topless is my question.
Who knows?
Did she look good?
No.
Was she was husky?
She all I know is that the picture has it, has it like
A little
pixelated,
blurred,
yeah. And what you can see, yeah.
So it's never the good ones, but also she's going to a McDonald's. It's not like it's like a posh nightclub and she's topless.
Evidently, she was 41 years old, and she got arrested.
Well, shocking.
She got released on $7,000 bail, and the owner of the McDonald's actually fired the employees that released the video that actually went viral on YouTube.
Well,
that's
honestly,
how the whole thing went down.
Wouldn't you start recording if you had a kind of an overweight topless woman flinging food in
their
McDonald's?
security camera.
Oh, it wasn't on a phone.
No, it was
I had
the
no idea.
security camera. That's why the owner of the McDonald's was upset, because a couple of his employees released security tapes.
Now, what was this all over? Is there anything on your report there?
All it says is this lady was just basically nuts. She was wearing bikini bottoms, and that's it.
Wow.
She was messing with the cash registers, throwing food, eating French fries. Yeah.
Can you imagine a kind of a husky topless woman in a bikini bottoms over by the little fry machine with the French fries?
That's just bad.
That is great.
There's something really wrong with that.
Seriously, but also, why at a McDonald's? I would have picked another
know.
restaurant.
I mean,
if you're going to go topless, go all the way. Go to a bar or
I
something.
don't know.
Go have
It's
some
just
cocktails.
better off not breaking into a restaurant.
Well, no, I would go to a nightclub or bar so you can have some drinks.
Maybe.
I mean, especially if you walk in topless, maybe you'd get a drink off for you or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you get lucky.
That's the strategy right
there.
there.
You go. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking.
Oh, man.
What do you got for? What's the next one?
I got another. Well, we might actually have time for a couple.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, Minnesota. Two guys were arrested because they accidentally dialed 911 when they were planning their little robbery heist.
Butt dial.
literally butt dial. The emergency feature on some phones, we can only dial 911.
Right.
Well, evidently they did that, and they did it once and hung up. And then they did it again and left the line open. And they were talking about robbing this auto body store.
And they're talking about it. Besides the fact, most cell phones nowadays are tracking devices.
Well,
so.
they were specific. They're like, oh, we're going to get to such and such store and whatever.
So there's a confession as well.
So
Nice.
the cops showed up, and they see two men in dark clothing walking out of the place, and sure enough, they got arrested.
Were they wearing ski masks? Do you know?
Doesn't say.
Do you remember in the old days when you used to watch television shows and they would there'd be like a heist and they'd either have a ski mask or they would have like pantyhose on their head or face?
Basically, they said.
you remember that, though?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
All it says is they're wearing dark clothing and they were carrying a television and some other box.
But for some reason, I have that vision of those old
Right,
TV
the ski
shows in my
mask.
head. The ski
Yeah,
mask with
that's
the
how they used to
pantyhose on
do
the
it.
head.
Right.
Would you cut the legs off the pantyhose if you put them on your head if you were burglarizing?
That would be different. No,
Because
you
you
your
look like
hair.
you have like bunny ears.
Oh
there.
no!
I mean,
I
that's
see.
kinda
What
weird.
I don't know. I don't think I'd wear pantyhose on my head anyway, so that's a whole nother story.
That's
you know?
yeah. Well, that's more late night entertainment.
Yeah, right. That's a different story. But yeah, anyway, the guys were charged with third-degree burglary.
Well,
it was a 38-year-old guy, actually a 32-year-old guy and a 38-year-old guy.
I was gonna say they're dumb, but they're not really dumb. That's just called bad luck.
That was real bad luck.
That is bad
It's
luck.
like, leave your cell phone in the car.
I think some karma got him or
yeah,
something.
Yeah, that was bad news. Unbelievable.
All right, your final one?
Okay,
Or
so
just two more?
let's see here. Well, there's some good ones actually.
Oh, keep
this
going.
week.
Keep going.
Let's go to. Oh God. Oh, how about this one? Oh, this is great. So, could you imagine renting a house and having a dead guy in your house?
What was left there?
Right.
Just hanging around?
Just hanging around.
What was he in the closet?
So what happened was it was this
He
couple.
came out?
This couple was getting a divorce, and they owned a property and they decided they were going to rent it out. And the husband went back to the property one day, and for whatever reason, he crawled underneath the stairwell, and I don't know if he OD'd or what. But she never heard anything about it because obviously they were divorced and she didn't know it. So anyway,
so they weren't together. Okay.
So they weren't together. So anyway, she just recently went to re-rent the house, and she opened a little cabinet under the stairs, and I guess it was just rank smelling. And sure enough, she found her ex-husband, who had been there for, they think, almost a year.
See, I'm calling shenanigans.
I
Because
think so, too.
even though they're divorced, if you're...
I don't think there was no kids or anything like that
If
involved,
they're both renting the property and they're both on the lease agreement or the rental agreement...
Well, it sounds to me like the ex-wife or the wife, whatever, was the one managing it. And maybe she was just sending him checks.
But he was like Schneider. He was just like the super going over there.
I have
doing
no
some
idea.
fix-its.
I don't know. But he just curled up there, and they found him like a year later. And
A
that's
year?
It was like almost
a year.
Yeah, that's what I said.
A year.
I don't. Maybe it was cold. I don't know.
No way.
I don't know, dude.
I
I'm
think
just-
she's behind it.
Listen, I'm just. Yeah, it could be shenanigans.
Hey, I'm
You're
calling
right.
shenanigans.
But
big
why
time,
would
but
she? Why would?
How would you react if you had a dead guy under your house?
I would have a problem with that.
I really would too. That's just creepy. Ugh.
I don't know. This last story I have is actually the best one.
Okay.
Personally. Could you imagine going to the ATM? You're going to take out $100 and 37 grand dropped out.
What would you do?
Well,
you're under camera.
Well,
right
I'll tell you
there,
what.
so.
You're on camera, but even still, it's not your money, of course. So obviously, you have to give
What
it back
was
to
given
the bank.
to you?
No.
No?
See, this guy went in, and it was actually this was in South Portland, Maine. He went up to the ATM. He was taking out $140 and 37 grand. Literally dropped out. And the cops pull up and see this guy stuffing money into like a bag at the ATM. And they're thinking, what in the world's going on here?
So just
Anyway.
just pulling some money out for the bar night.
He did return all the money to the bank, and the bank did not prosecute.
Well, that's lucky because
He's
you know,
real lucky.
You know he was going to go.
Oh,
when-
yeah. If the cops didn't pull up, he was
Do you think
he
he-
was in the Bahamas, baby.
Bahamas are
Bye-bye.
going to a casino.
Yeah,
at that point.
at the very least.
Yeah, that would be. That's one you have to sit and kind of think about a little bit. I mean, whether or not you would. I'll look at it this way: how much was he actually pulling out?
$140.
140. I'll just make it an even 200 and then report the rest.
Yeah, see what happened
about
was
that?
evidently some lady saw this guy standing at the ATM at like 5:30 in the morning, and he was there for a really long time.
Well, with all
she
that loot coming out,
she
yeah.
called the cops on him, and the cops pulled him. Literally, he was stuffing a
See,
shopping bag full of bills.
What is she? She's nosy. That is just wrong. She's got to mind her business.
You know, it's interesting because let's see. It doesn't
Probably
say-
smells like mothballs.
Yeah, it doesn't say she worked for the bank. It just says a woman saw this man there. Yeah,
She's a rat.
yeah.
Ah.
But yeah, anyway, the banks say that it was just a coding error in the ATM.
See,
yeah, that's a mighty big coding error.
At the end of the beat of the street, I'm going to say this one. The story before this was about bad luck and kind of dumb criminals. This one was about actually almost basically committing a crime, but getting away with it. So it kind of evened itself out
Yeah,
there
right.
when it comes to, I guess, the criminal yin and yang. So anyways, we got to end of the show. We actually have to give a shout out, of course, to What the Hell Bar and Grill. They're going to be doing another Tuesday. It will be April 15th, another Wild Jokers comedy night we're excited to announce. Of course, let's see, Cactus Jack's in Ahwatukee, I believe, is going to be the first Thursday in May is going to be their next Wild Joker night.
Nice.
So we got them all locked up. We encourage encourage everybody to come on out. Cactus Jack's, as you know, is in Ahwatukee. Beautiful Ahwatukee. I call it the world's largest cul-de-sac.
Right.
And East Mesa provides us the What the Hell Bar and Grill.
And don't forget to check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/wildjokersradio, or you can check our website at www.thewildjokers.com.
We got to thank this episode of Wild Jokers, Mr. Chuck Woolery, Mr. Love Connection, got to love that, and of course Tommy Chong. Next week we're going to be trying to catch up with Cheech of Cheech and Chong and Mr. Shadow Stevens. We'll catch you next week. Thank you for listening to Wild Jokers. Have a great weekend.
Autobahn Mortgage, 602-980-LOAN. That's 602-980-5626. Call Autobahn Mortgage for all your commercial and residential mortgage needs. We are friendly, fast, and efficient. 602-980-LOAN. You can also see us on the internet, www.autobahnmortgage.com. Call us today, 602-980-LOAN. 602-980-5626.